I'm the child rights coordinator and sexual wellness educator. I have just a couple important group norms that we want to set, but then we are going to turn it over right away to the students for their opening statements. I know in meetings with President Morris last week, the emphasis was on we want the student voice to be the focal point. We want to honor that, and the template for this night was suggested by students, and we're going to follow that. So just highlighting that there are mandatory reporters in the room. So many folks up here, myself included, a mandatory reporter. So just if there's something you don't want getting reported, just being aware, names, dates, locations, that's what constitutes a report. Next, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It is Teal Week. Last night was Take Back Night. So with all of that, I want you to know that I acknowledge, everyone up here acknowledges, we know there are survivors in the room right now. We know there are survivors who also were not in a place to make it here tonight. And so with all of that, I just want to start with a general content warning, trigger warning. We are going to be talking about sexual misconduct during this forum. So if at any point you do need to step out, we do have counseling upstairs right by our side. So that's just up one floor. We have 3 counselors there, and an advocate is waiting outside the doors here, and they would then take you up to one of the Thelmo offices. So really the takeaway from all of that is please, self-care is so important for this forum, but then also well beyond that. Then next, we just want to underscore that this venue is not for making defamatory remarks. It's the lawyer in me that says, I really want to protect you. I don't want you being in legal jeopardy for something that you say that is defamatory. So setting that as a ground rule for us. Next, we as a university are not recording this, but it's very possible some of you are here. So just wanting you to know, we're not recording it, but somebody might be, that is okay, but just having that out there. And then finally, thank you, fellow leaders, student organizations who are going to speak, all of you really for being here so we can together create a campus and have a campus that prevents sexual misconduct. So I'm going to now invite I believe it's 4 student representatives from the organizations to make their opening statements.
Thank you all for coming tonight to the forum. My name is Nina Spinney. I'm a survivor. I'm also an AWARE-trained advocate, and I'm also the secretary of Thelmo. And tonight I'm here to share a statement on behalf of Thelmo. Every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Sexual violence can happen to anyone, but it's much more pervasive on college campuses. Sexual violence does not only happen to women. We know that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 26 men experience complete or attempted rape. Moreover, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 3 men experience sexual harassment in their lifetime. And these rates are significantly higher for people of color and queer individuals. Your Thelmo student government is here to support all survivors and allies of sexual violence in whatever way we possibly can. Clearly, this issue is of the utmost importance to our student body, so we would love to work with you all, and we want to hear your needs in order to make policy changes. We meet with senior staff and administrators monthly, this Friday to be exact. And if there's specific questions or issues that you want brought up, you need to tell us so we can communicate this to them. Because of past student input, the previous Thelmo Senior Executive Board were able to create initiatives that aimed at mitigating the prevalence of drink spiking, for example. If you have any concerns or ideas related to policy change, again, please reach out so we can coordinate meetings with you to work on this. We see you, we hear you, and we want to work through this together and do whatever we can to support you. Please remember that we are a resource and that other resources are available to you on this campus, such as the Advocates 24/7 House hotline, the Renewal House, Counseling Services, the Nine Coalition, the Dove, and Title IX Coordinator Lindsay Cohen, just to name a few. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Molly Doyle. I'm the president of the Advocates. You might recognize me from the speech I gave last night at Take Back Tonight. So obviously, this issue is very near and dear to my heart, as I too am a survivor, and it's really hard to watch my campus kind of crumble under this pressure of nobody being able to feel safe in their own home. So I would like to be able to read a statement on behalf of the Advocates and on behalf of my organization. Rape should not be a political issue. What happens in regard to the violation of somebody's body should not be fought over by anybody but the owner of said body. But that is what is happening in this world, unfortunately, and that is what I am here to address as president of the Advocates. The acknowledgement that the weaponization of sexual violence in a political context is a systematic issue is critical to the understanding of how to ensure issues like this do not happen again. That being said, it is no secret that this situation was handled very poorly by the higher administration at the school, even within its legal constraints. I would like to start by addressing the students. Firstly, do not try to uncover the identity of Jane Doe. This woman did not ask to have her life exposed in this way and has chosen to remain anonymous for a reason. If you choose to pursue her and share her identity, you have now become the violator. Secondly, please do your research about these issues. You need to be well informed to be able to make the change that you guys are wanting. The spread of false information is just as damaging as the concealment of this case. Now to address the issues that we advocates and students are facing. The concealment of this trial, though we understand there were legal limitations, caused the students to lose trust in their university. How can we know who to trust when we aren't told about issues like this? We are not unreasonable or dramatic. We are scared. The second issue we are seeing is the intense victim blaming that is going on. Jane Doe was given more hoops to jump through than a show dog and is now being displayed as such. This was not a silly mistake turned learning experience. This was a life. I've been an advocate long enough to know that this is not remotely the first life to be collateral damage for the sake of the school's learning experiences. I would like to end by saying that we are loud and our voices will be heard. I'm not asking, but begging you students to continue to fight next week and every week that follows. Keep this feeling of unrest and be an advocate and an activist for more than just today. This happened again because we felt complacent and forgot about the events of last October. This happens to people every single day, and we need to continue to fight for every single person that this school has failed because there are too many of us. The point of boiling over should not be the only time we are acknowledging the mistreatment of survivors at the school. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Kaluchka and I'm the president and founder of the Nine Coalition, and I just want to thank you all for being here and supporting Jane Doe in this way. So, for those of you who do not know, the Nine Coalition started in October of 2021 after a protest due to a similar situation. I am disappointed to be addressing you all under these circumstances again. I am upset at the fact that this is the second time something like this occurred, at least to our knowledge, given that we were promised that things would be better after the first time. I am upset at I, like many others within my organization and students on campus, and am extremely frustrated at the fact that this situation even occurred. There were red flags that indicated this predator had a past, and it makes us all so sad and angry to know that Jane Doe would never have experienced this traumatic situation had precautions been made to address these issues. Why does it take something bad for action to occur? Why must students or faculty be in the direct line of harm for some form of prevention to be made? There is absolutely no reason why a faculty or student should ever feel unsafe with their coworkers or counterparts. Though we understand that St. Lawrence cannot be held accountable for the actions of Predator Morales, we demand that there is some accountability for the actions that were not taken to support Jane Doe and prevent what has occurred to her and others on this campus. The mental trauma that Jane Doe and the St. Lawrence community have collectively experienced by knowing they interacted with a person as deplorable as Professor Morales is something that needs to be addressed, considered, and alleviated. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Eliza Hand, and I am the president of Spectrum, and I am here to speak on behalf of Spectrum because I feel that it is important for us to make our voices heard on campus after what has happened. because sadly, marginalized communities such as the LGBTQ+ community face very high rates of sexual violence, and I want our voices to be heard so I and other students like me can hopefully feel safe and listened to. The school prides itself on diversity and inclusion and overall making itself a safe environment, and that is honestly one of the things that probably drew a lot of us here. However, with how the situation, with how everything with Django was handled was very bad on the university's part, and it has made me and many other people like me feel even more unsafe on this campus. And I hope that tonight we can hopefully learn more and potentially have the university listen and overall just have people listen to us. And I will also say this now, Spectrum will always support and stand with survivors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for those really meaningful statements. So now it's going to be President Morris with her opening statement.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you all for being here, for engaging with campus leaders in dialogue, and for expressing your voices. Everyone present tonight shares something very important in common, and that is we all decry sexual misconduct. We all agree that we must strive for a society and a campus free from sexual misconduct. And when sexual misconduct is reported to have occurred, we need to have good policies and processes in place to address it. We need to ensure agency on the part of survivors in determining a formal versus an informal approach. And when someone is found to have violated a university policy, we need to take that seriously. And of course, everything we do has to be in compliance with the law and has to require due process for all parties who are involved. I'd like to make a few comments based on the most common questions that I've heard over the last week. And I'm going to start with the communication that I sent out to you all last Thursday morning, letting you know that the university had been named in this lawsuit. It was important to me that people on this campus hear about this directly from me first. And I know that you have a variety of concerns about that communication that I sent out last Thursday, but I hope you can see that I was communicating directly, that I was not hiding something nor sweeping it under the rug. You've made it very clear that you expected there to be a content warning on that message. And when I reflect back on that, my very first sentence in that message, which said that this topic is about the difficult subject of sexual misconduct, that was intended to be my content warning, but it wasn't explicitly stated, and I apologize for that. In the follow-up message that I sent you last week announcing this forum today, I corrected that error on my part, and I had a content warning, and Lindsay provided a content warning tonight on behalf of all of us who may respond to your questions or comments tonight. It's evidence that I'm listening and that I will do different and do better in response to your input. I've heard a number of questions about what the university has done to ensure the safety of our community after these allegations were made. And I want to share with you a couple of the facts in the case as our records show that the university put in place a no contact order between the two faculty members involved immediately, and shortly thereafter the accused professor was placed on administrative leave. That professor has not been on campus during this past year, either fall or spring semester, and will not be teaching here in the fall. I want to clarify that we have a thorough background check policy that was in place and followed when the accused professor was hired. And it is true that we received some allegations about him through social media. And we investigated those ourselves and using outside law enforcement, including Homeland Security, and we were not able to substantiate those claims that were made. And finally, I want to say something about the legal matter before the university. Many of you have read that complaint, so you know that in it there are two defendants, the university and the accused professor. In cases like that, where there are multiple defendants, they are independent of each other. And what that means is that the university hasn't been, isn't currently, and won't in the future be defending the accused professor. That is a private matter between the plaintiff and that defendant. The university's engagement in this matter is to defend the university's actions prior to the allegations and since those allegations were made. And that is something that the university is doing through the legal process. In closing, while I recognize that there are questions and concerns on the part of students, I want to reiterate that we are aligned in our goal of promoting a campus free from sexual misconduct. We've done a lot in the last 2 years to improve our campus situation, but we can always be better. And we are grateful to you for demanding that we be better, and we look forward to working with you to become a better campus and a stronger community. Thanks, and Lindsay, I think you're moving now to some questions.
I believe that I'm going to do that all night, I promise you. So I believe the next step is for those 4 student organizations, each of you will start with a question, and then we move it around more open to everybody else. So if those 4 folks want to come up again.
Hello, thank you all for being here. My name is Johanna Sherman. I am a survivor, and I'm asking a question on behalf of the Thelma Senate. To Kate Morris and the administration we look to in order to keep us safe, what do you plan to do specifically in order to restore the sense of trust that students may have lost in this university?
Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate the question. When I think about the protest that some of you participated in October of 2021, we were like we are now in a difficult campus situation. And we made some commitments at that point in time that we followed through on. At that point in time, we didn't have a permanent Title IX coordinator in place. And indeed, the university had not at that point in time had someone who was a dedicated Title IX coordinator, someone whose job it was to do Title IX and to work with students and faculty and staff on sexual misconduct prevention and sexual wellness education. Fast forward 18 months, we now have that in place, and my colleague Lindsay, who many of you know. Also, at that time, we didn't have a fully staffed student counseling program. And we went out and we raised money, and we worked with Thelma, and we worked with other folks on campus, and we got our student health center fully funded with the right number of counselors for the size of our student body. We were also very concerned about general well-being for students at that point in time. We made that student wellness one of our top priorities during the past year. And we did a lot of things to support student well-being, including creating the Office of Student Wellness and Student Activities and identifying my colleague Laura as the director there. And there's a host of programming that's coming out of all of those 3 areas. I bring these things up because they are major actions, major initiatives, major investments that the university has made in students since that time in October of 2021. And I said this at the student protest that happened this Sunday, and I'll say it again, Joanna. I ask for a little bit of trust based on a track record of being at a difficult moment like this and taking actions that we can point to that have made this a better institution. I want you to know that you have over a dozen campus leaders who are here at the front of the room tonight. We are all here because we want to hear your voices, because we want to hear your thoughts about what we can do to make this a stronger campus community and a campus community that will be less marred by sexual misconduct, that hopefully we can eliminate sexual misconduct from our campus community. We are listening. We are, every single one of us, already taking actions that you may or may not be aware of, whether that is talking to our colleagues informally, holding formal training sessions, revising and reviewing policies, thinking carefully already, planning for what we're doing next year, thinking about training programs for students, faculty, and staff. And there's a lot of people who are on this panel up here who have a lot more concrete things that they can say, but I hope I've given you a little bit in terms of our accomplishments over the last year and a half and a few things that are actively underway. Thank you.
So my question on behalf of the advocates is about the initial letter that was released. So to President Morris and the council and probably the team of lawyers to help with that. The only question that there really is to ask, acknowledging that this council is aware that the advocates were left out of the student resource list on that initial meeting, on that initial email that was sent out regarding the case. And there was a meeting about what resources to put in the list, yet we were still not included. So the question stands, was this simply due to negligence, or was it an intentional display of the lack of respect that is often shown towards student organizations like the Advocates and EMS?
I'll give you just a second. I should have worn higher shoes. I'm Laura Lavoie. I'm the Director of Wellness Education and Student Engagement. I came to answer this question because I was in the room when we were deciding about the email that was going to be sent. So I'm trying to address you and address everyone and stay on the mic at the same time. What happened is that in the process of drafting the email, we initially had a link included that went to the Title IX page where all the resources are listed. In conversations that I've had with students when I was interviewing to take on the wellness position, and since then, and also in line with our JED campus initiative that we're doing right now, which some of you may have seen, we began posting some of that after you got back from spring break. But St. Lawrence is in the process of becoming a JED campus, and JED is an organization focused on student mental health and suicide prevention. So both in comments that I've heard from students in wellness and from JED recommendations, it's become clear that when someone's in a moment of crisis or maybe experiencing a trauma, they typically don't want to have to click on a link, scroll through, and try to find information. So on the link that was initially included, it was very comprehensive and all the Title IX resources were there, including the advocates prominently. What I suggested is that we take out the link and that we list resources in the email. There are a few of us listing different resources. I pulled up my phone so that I could access phone numbers. And in the process of doing that, the advocates unfortunately were missed. I want to make it clear that it was not intentional. It was in a busy moment, trying to get a message out quickly. And I'm very sorry that it happened, and that the advocates were not included. It absolutely was not something that we did on purpose. I do want to note that especially because it was my suggestion to take out the link and to list the resources there. That if you've seen the purple flyers that are around campus saying, here are your resources for sexual assault and sexual misconduct, that's something that my office worked on with Lindsay, and that we put out. And if you look at the Wellness Instagram page and you look at the sexual assault resources, advocates is featured prominently there, it's featured prominently on those flyers. So myself and everyone up here, we very much do value the advocates. We've always had the advocates listed front and center in a lot of other communications that we put out. I will say with a lot of those other things, it's been something that I've kind of sat down and taken my time and done, very carefully and thoughtfully. And again, in this moment, it was just trying to get the communication out quickly so that the student body could become aware of the situation. So I very much apologize to you, Molly, to other advocates in the room, and to other students who were upset that the advocates were left out of that communication. It was not intentional. I am very sorry that it happened. Did I answer your question okay? Okay.
So the question I had is based on some answers of the protest. So administration stated that St. Lawrence was notified of the situation at the end of April, and that students only had a week in the semester to interact with the alleged perpetrator online. However, in the legal document, it stated that Jane Doe reported the incident on April 15th, 3 days after the incident occurred to her. That leaves 4 weeks from that date to the end of finals week, which allowed for student interaction with the person. Why was he not restricted from interacting with students or other staff outside of class, even over Zoom? And was there any monitoring of his interactions with students or faculty to ensure their safety?
I appreciate that question. Thank you very much. My name is Kimberly Flint Hamilton. I'm the Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion. So I want to talk about what happened and the timeline in what happened. When we spoke on Sunday at protest, we were trying to remember all the things that happened and the order. But since then, we've had a chance to look through and clarify some things. So, according to our policy, once we get a report, the first thing that we do is have a conversation with the person who issued the report to find out how they want to proceed. And if the person who submitted the report, the complainant, requests an investigation, then we start one as part of due process. Now, once this complaint was received, a no contact order was put in place. Within about 4 hours, it was the same day that we received the complaint. It's important also to understand that the complaint that you have access to is not the same thing as the original report that we received. Over the next few days after we received the complaint, and you're right, it was April 15th. So over the next few days, the university received additional details about some of the allegations, and we determined that additional interim measures were needed, and so we put those into place. And they included, in addition to the no contact order, a directive to continue courses remotely for the rest of the semester and a campus ban. And then later on, the respondent was placed on administrative leave and did not teach classes throughout this academic year, fall or spring, and will not be on campus this fall. I want to emphasize that the university has an obligation to follow due process. And what that means is that we can't put in measures that suggest that we are considering a respondent to be guilty or responsible for actions until after the process has gone all the way through and is complete. I also want to say that due process is what helps us ensure that all parties' rights are protected, that both complainant and respondent have opportunities to present their case and to represent themselves. we put in place the measures that we felt we had to help ensure that the campus stayed safe, while at the same time protecting the rights by due process of the respondent. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so my question is, like I said earlier, how SLU claims to value diversity and inclusion and just wanting to make the school safe. However, with what has happened and how the university handled it, in many people's eyes, it feels like I do not truly value these things, especially from when I talk to some of my friends about this. What do you plan to do? What do you plan to do to improve this on campus, especially for those of us who may not feel safe on campus currently?
Thank you for your question. And I think there may be a variety of people up here who might have answers to a piece of that. We do have, through our sexual wellness and sexual misconduct prevention program, we do have it's not a task force, but it's a committee that is working together. And there are 4 different subgroups, and one of those subgroups is specifically about students or community members who come from historically underrepresented or historically marginalized groups. So there are people on this campus who are specifically looking at those particular topics. And I'm not a part of that group, so I don't feel like I can speak to that specifically. I don't know if there's anybody else on the panel who wants to talk about that, but I do know that it is being addressed and has been a part of our institutional strategy over the last year.
Before I open it up to everyone for questions, I will just add on those subcommittees, it used to have a really long name, we tried to shorten it, it's called the Sexual Wellness Advisory Committee. And that 4th subgroup that President Morris just mentioned with helping underrepresented groups on a path to healing, I'm gonna be very honest that right now, that group is on pause a bit. And that came from conversations that Kimberly had with several groups. I believe BLI, the Sociedad, I'm trying to remember a few of the others.
Men in Color.
Men in Color. Carefree, Black Girls. So it was a group on a Sunday that had talked to Kimberly, and it was just a sense of, we are frustrated. We feel like just mental health resources for us that's our focus right now. And it was just, for right now, Title IX is just not what we want to talk about. And that was something that I didn't want to keep going back to all of those groups when it wasn't what they wanted to talk about in that moment. So that's something, like I said, it is paused right now. I'm hoping to revisit it again come the fall. But just if that's something that you're asking, wait, why is it paused? I actually have a lot of good ideas I want to talk about. Please, after this, reach out to me. Even if it's not an entire group that wants to unpause it, if it's 1 or 2 people with additional ideas, that's something, it's my full-time job. I enjoy running with it, creating a program, and being able to bring something to faculty, to staff, to all the students to learn from. Okay, so we're gonna pass the mic, or they go up.
We have 4 mics in the room, so folks are comfortable coming to the mic, but if you are also more central, myself or someone can bring it to you. And there is also 1 mic up on the balcony as well. So if folks can make their way to the mic, great, but we also can bring people over there kind of in the top spot.
I did just want to add briefly that the concerns that Lindsay just referenced that were raised in Kimberly that were more about mental health. Kimberly and I are also on another committee where we put those concerns into a report that has now been shared with a much larger group. So I just did want to add that footnote that
those concerns did go somewhere. The concerns about mental health for individuals from marginalized communities did not get paused. That just got taken to another channel that is specifically focused on student mental health and well-being.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. We'll start down here and then we'll go up top.
Hi, what am I gonna say? Trigger warning, essay. My name is Fernanda. I was sexually assaulted my freshman year. I'm a senior now. I was assaulted in Whitman by a really close friend of mine, and I followed due process as some of staff mentioned. It took about 8 months before my perpetrator was kind of removed from campus, and he was removed from his scholarship. I know the process of Title IX through personal experience. And what I want to ask is how an interim Title IX coordinator doesn't know that all the survivors deserve legal counsel throughout the process. And there are a lot of inconsistencies in the legal document that has been public. For instance, it says that the investigation, the Title IX investigation, was finalized in October 2022. Jane Doe was not notified till November 2022. Until this day, it hasn't, it just said that the investigation was concluded. The findings are not public yet. So I'm just a little bit confused because it feels like a betrayal, and that the staff that I'm here, seeing here, are lying to our faces. So how can we recuperate trust if we read through the 60-page paper, and it feels like a little bit like infantilizing to me that I'm here listening to, yeah, everybody deserves due process. We put like a no contact order. Yeah, the students were just 1 week in contact with the professor. I'm sorry, but I don't believe it, and it makes me really angry because it's been 5 years since that happened to me. This happened last year, and I hope that then, I don't want any more of this. It's just tiring, it's infuriating to hear that you say that you care about us. And right now what I see is you care about optics, and that's why you send the email. And that's it.
I really appreciate this question. I'm sorry that the process took so long. That's one of the challenges with due process, that it sometimes takes a lot longer to reach conclusions about cases that are brought forth. So I want to address your question in two ways, because I hear it kind of as two questions. First, there are allegations made in the complaint that you have access to about the support person. And I will say that when we first released notice of investigations to the parties involved in this case, there was a statement made that advisors need to be non-attorney members of the university. And I'll explain that. We have several different policies. I don't know if you've tried to read the policy, but we have several different policies that apply to different kinds of situations. And those policies vary in a lot of different places, and this is one of those places, whether or not, who a support person can be during an interview process. The university doesn't take a stance at all on whether a party can retain their own legal counsel. That's up to the individual. We don't tell anybody that they can't. But what happens during the interview process is something that's part of our policy. So I'll say it was a mistake. That phrase was in the notice of investigation. And then when the complainant reached out and asked about that and said, you know, I see this and I think it might be mistaken. Is that true? We looked it back up. We wrote back and said, yes, you're absolutely right. You are able to have an attorney as a support person during the investigation. It was the very next day. And so I wish I could say that our processes are perfect. We do our absolute best. But when we do find errors, we make an effort to correct them as soon as we can. So that response was speaking to the complaint that's been made public. I can't really speak about the report and the process that we're in right now, except for to say that it's taken a very long time, and but the process is moving along, and I can't tell you when it'll be completed, but we're doing the best that we can to bring it to its conclusion.
So I see you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see we have one down here. I'm gonna go upstairs and then come back down here. So I don't see you, but yes, I see people waiting. Please go ask your question.
Yeah, hi, you might have already answered this part with the previous question, but I was wondering if you could explain the details and process of due process and the legal actions and steps the university takes in cases like this emerge, as well as the process of the lawsuit against the university, and if we will keep getting updates.
So due process, and I'm going to invite the rest of the panelists to weigh in on this if they think I leave anything out, okay? Due process is mainly about ensuring that we have a process that the members of the community have access to the policy and the process, and that decisions aren't made that presume guilt or responsibility before things have gone through their process. There are other pieces of it, but fundamentally that's it, I believe. But I do want to say a word about due process. I already said a little while ago that due process is our obligation. The moment the university receives a report, we're bound, both by our policy and by the law, that ensure that we follow due process. But I also want to say this, and this is frustrating. I think for all of us, it's a frustrating fact. I think that due process is a law, but it's not just a law. It's not just something that we say. Due process is the right thing to do. It ensures that the rights of parties are respected. It ensures that we don't jump to judgment and possibly punishment based on emotion rather than based on evidence and facts that are presented. Our nation has a long history of making decisions that harm people in general, but particularly people from underrepresented backgrounds, and especially people of color, because decisions are made without following due process. That's a problem, and that's not a history that we want to be part of.
Please, yes, back here.
All right, so I have a specific question / comment about the no contact order. I have been a trained advocate for a little less than 2 months, and during those 2 months, kind of like a broken record, I've heard stories from multiple SLU students about no contact orders being violated and no actions being taken. And so what I want to say about that, what I want to ask is, how was this no contact order, how was it pulled through with? How did they make sure that there was no contact between the two parties? And as I'm sure you've probably heard this before, as I've said, I've heard it from many different students, what are you planning to do to sort of enforce no contact orders more and make sure that everybody is respected, that the right to education is respected, and that people who abuse no contact orders don't get off scot-free. That's all I want to ask.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. Because on the student side, I'm the one that puts it in no contact orders. It depends on what the situation is, the severity. If somebody had an incident where they've been violent in a certain way, sometimes they go home as they're having their hearing and other things go on. What we try to do is put a no contact order in where we believe students can be respectful of each other, but stay away as we do this work, okay? There's some who just is not necessarily connected to Title IX, maybe because they had a bad experience with somebody. We put those in. We find that students tend to listen, not to violate the no contact order, but at times we do have, as the justice mentioned, there's some students who get a little too close. Some students are upset because somebody has done something to them, which I fully understand. The pain that they experience, they see the person again, or that person is too close to them, or that student may be in the same classroom with them. Part of the due process is that we cannot move someone out of a classroom without going through the process. So yes, due process, Title IX, dealing with no contact can be difficult and tricky at times. I think we've done it well, but there's times when some students just, okay, if I find somebody who's intentionally gotten too close to another student, I deal with them in a different way, okay? But we understand the no contact, and we hope that is a piece that we can put in, that students, we believe everybody here is a highly intelligent St. Lawrence University student, including myself, that stay away means stay away. Don't interact with someone who you don't want interacting with you, okay? So many times, sometimes we have challenges, many times we don't. But what I say to students, if something happens, let me know. And as students know who dealt with me around these no contacts, I give out my home phone number, my cell phone number, so if you need to call me if something's happening in the middle of the night, we can address it right away. But there's some students who tend to want to get a little too close and press it, and we try to deal with them in an effective way, and it doesn't turn out well for them. But the no contact order is the piece we have in place, again, to try to keep students separated from each other when difficult situations happen. But again, part of due process, we just can't move them out of the classroom or off a team or anything without them going through the process. Okay? Thank you.
Before we get to the next question, two parts that I'll add. I can't say too much of no contacts, how they were always dealt with in the past. Very much that was Grant's purview. More and more it's starting to move under me, especially when they are Title IX no contacts. Two examples of ones that I dealt with. One was where it was within kind of an email within a class. Understandably, there might be 25 people in an email list. Technically, because that was sent to someone where student A has a no contact order with student B, that is a breach of the no contact. That is a time where I want to work with those students to make sure, okay, work with the professor. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Because to me, that is one place where I'm not immediately going to say, you need to lose your student leadership, you need to lose student employment. Because it's still a breach, but it's an example where, okay, it maybe was part of the class, and so that's where we work through that. Another one that I worked with was, okay, it was an initial breach, and I said, if you do this again, you will lose student leadership or student employment. It hasn't happened yet, but if they breach that no contact order again, I am ready, yes, following on that. So I'd say it's not always an immediate, you said hi to someone and now it's you lose all opportunities on campus, but it's usually giving an initial warning, an initial conversation, and then if it continues once, we take action. I think we're gonna go back over here.
Hello, my name is Neil DeGraw. I'm a survivor. I really want to know why he still is paid while he's on leave, as well as you talk about programs to go for, like training people to do better. you realize that some people are not going to listen to those programs. You can't stop everybody from making the wrong decisions. You need to protect people, not just give them a program to follow.
So, I can only respond to that briefly and say, we can't deprive somebody of income in a case like this, where the case has not concluded and there's been no finding of responsibility. That's part of due process. We simply can't do it. So we do our best to protect the campus community, but we can't do anything that would penalize the person as if to suggest that we believe they're guilty or responsible until the process is completed.
Go back here, here, and then over there.
Hi, okay, so my question was, why was he, Morales, still scheduled to teach in the fall next semester?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Carl Schoenberg. I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs. The answer to that, I think the most straightforward answer to that question is that in our processes, we try to be extremely careful to maintain confidentiality because to protect the parties, because we don't want to do undue harm. But what that means, what that can mean, is that the information that would kind of normally get shared internally in the university in something like planning the course schedule is more cordoned off because in order to protect that confidentiality. When it became clear that that was an issue, we acted right away to change that, and I wrote a message last week to the students who were registered in those classes to let them know that was not going to happen, that we would not be teaching in the fall, but at the same time that we are going to make sure that they're able to take the courses that they need to take in order to complete their majors and minors and to do the other things that they want to be able to do academically. So that was a mistake and a problem with our internal processes. But I hope that makes at least the reasons for it clear, and also that as soon as we recognized that there was an issue there, we took action to address that and try to essentially reassure the students about we were affected by that, about what was going to happen. I hope that answers the question.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so you're saying a lot about due process, but I think there's a difference between due process and due process in a timely manner. I'm looking at an example right now of a professor at Columbia who was accused of sexual harassment in February of 2022. Columbia hired a private firm to investigate the allegations, and they were verified in July of 2022, and they were fired. So that's 5 months. What is SLU doing to conclude the investigation in a timely manner? Have they hired a private firm? What does due process mean? Does it mean a conviction out, like in a court of law? What does that mean for this situation?
So that's sort of a multi-layered question. I'll try to address it as best I can. In terms of law enforcement, we don't have any part of that, and so I can't really speak to what's going on with whether or not there is law enforcement, whether there's been a charge. I can tell you that every case is different, and some cases are very quick to resolve, and they can be resolved in a matter of a few months, and others take a lot longer. And part of the reason things take longer, and I'm not speaking specifically about this case because I can't really talk about this case, but in general I can say that the number of witnesses involved influences the timeline. What time of year the investigation starts influences the timeline. How complicated the investigative report is influences the timeline. Whether or not those who are assigned as review board members or adjudicators, what their schedules look like and how they're able to approach it. We address these kinds of cases using internal review boards for students with an outside person chairing the review board and an internal adjudicators for employee cases. And the meetings that need to take place, the interviews, the discussions, the weighings of evidence, those have to take place around people's regular work schedule. And certain times of year are super busy, and it's very hard to find time for two people who are busy but very different schedules possible to get together and meet. And so this has taken longer than most cases would. But I can't share with you the details of why. I can just say that we hope cases take shorter, but some cases take longer. It's a complicated reality.
So before we go over there, one thing I will add that in doing a policy review and the new Title IX Biden regulations will come out in May. So it's really that May, June where I'll be reworking a lot of our policies and procedures. One of the parts that I'm going to introduce into it is right now we have generally a 4 to 6 month estimate time frame for the whole thing, knowing that it might take longer. It's something that I'm going to be trying to put timelines on each stage of the process, just to at each stage the people involved, that they can know what their individual part should take. So it might not solve all of these problems, but I think it's at least one step so we can have a good benchmark for each of them, so that if one part is lagging, I'm now full-time able to go over to somebody's office and say, hey, let's talk about this. Why is it taking so long? And get an answer that day, rather than sometimes it having to take a few days or even a week. I'm always, as you can see, walking across campus, and that's something that I want to do. Can't promise it'll be faster, but it will at least introduce those timeframes. So we're going to go over here, and then up there, I see a hand too.
Okay. Hi guys. I just want to preface this by saying that I am not making this statement as an affiliate of any on-campus organization. I'm making this statement as a student of St. Lawrence University. SLU doesn't finish. SLU doesn't follow through, and that was made very clear to me when I made a report. Rather, a report was made for me last spring. I was called into Rance Davis's office, and we spoke. And he told me that he would talk to some of the people that I knew, and he would figure it out. And he also told me that I had to write a letter of apology to an EMT that I had allegedly hit while I was being transported to Canton Potsdam. Drugged. I have no memory of that night, none. And so when I went home on what felt like the worst day of my life, I sat in front of my laptop trying to make a statement, apologizing to someone I didn't know about something I don't remember doing. And I emailed Rance and I said, look, I can't do this. And I never received an email back. I never knew what happened to that so-called investigation. I never was told there wasn't enough evidence to pursue anything. I was never told what my options were. So this is a problem that SLU continuously has, and I want to know what's being done to change it.
That's a very good question, and I do remember that. What happened, we thought that something that happened you were involved with, and I addressed it with the other folks, and how we addressed it. I didn't respond back to you because I believed you were already working with someone, and I didn't want to re-agitate or cause more problems for you, because I knew you were already an emotional upset. I had made some call-outs to counseling services to have somebody check on you, but I didn't want to re-engage with you in a negative way because something had already bad happened to you.
Are you referring to the 3 mandatory alcohol counseling sessions that I had to go to?
This is what we do. Anytime I have someone who's been transported because of alcohol or signed off, I have them meet with the alcohol counselor, and what you do with the alcohol counselor is private. I don't engage in that, but I want to make sure that you're going to be safe and that you understand what happened so it doesn't happen again. That's what I do at that time.
I'm going to bring it just back to the forum, for something that maybe we do need to continue this at a separate time. Before I go upstairs to the next question, I really do appreciate all of your individual experiences. I do. I just know that right now, I don't want to get too much into anyone's personal conversations that have taken place. Like, I just think as far as for all of you, we don't want to get too in the weeds of what happened to one person in the room. But that's something at another time, not in this setting. I want to talk about that, so how we can make sure things like that are handled better. But for right now, as much as we can, to the process, the procedures, rather than those individual cases. But yes, we're going to go upstairs wherever I pointed before. Are there 2 of you?
We have one over here.
Okay, so is there 2 in the corner over here? Okay, so we're gonna go this corner and then that one, okay?
The individual classes are really nice, but I think most people here, especially a lot of people who ask questions, are just wondering, are there any concrete ideas or steps that are going to be taken by St. Lawrence University to improve the semester process or speed up any cases? The platitudes are nice, but they do not mean a lot to the victims who want this resolved in an efficient manner. Don't be excited.
So that's one thing that I'm looking at for all of our policies, all of our procedures. I am working to shorten that time frame. I'm really doing my best on the cases that we have right now to do a semester and a little bit. That is my internal goal, to get them there. And then as far as for other procedures, one thing that I've already introduced just into my everyday practice is when I'm working with someone, I ask, do you want me to email you an update every week? So that they aren't going 2-3 months not hearing something. I know that's something that has happened in the past, but I give them that option. Some people don't want to hear from me until it gets to the next stage, and I'm going to respect that. And I say, if at any point you change your mind and you do want to hear from me every week or twice a week, I will make that change. So that's just one small step that I've been doing. But you're right, there's a lot more that we can be doing, but that's something that I go through the procedures. I talk with the advocates, with the 9 Coalition, learning from those personal stories of what hasn't gone right. I hate that that's something that we would learn on someone that we made a mistake before, but I want to make sure that type of mistake doesn't happen in the future, or that we can learn then how to make those procedures better. So I think, yes, over in the corner here.
Hi, I just have an all-encompassing question. 7 months ago, in this very room actually, some people were here for this when I asked this question, and it was actually stonewalled because no one was able to figure out an effective answer to it, or it was just dodged because it was perceived as dodgeable. But my concern here, and for context, if you will, last spring for me was like the equivalent of Watergate. My respect for what was going on in the institution was gradually eroding. I started this school year in August being poisoned on the first week of school. I'm not going to hold anyone accountable for that because it's not anyone in particular's fault. I personally think it was avoidable for certain reasons. But that aside, the question I asked 7 months ago during a governmental related meeting here was that what will we do to reduce crime in our environment? People deserve better. This is a professional institution. I don't see why we shouldn't be making more progress in that sector. I'm disappointed. Just because I have 2 months left doesn't mean I don't have respect for anyone else with years left here where they would want change to happen. I think there's a lot of issues here. I just don't know how to put it anymore. When the bill was around, things were fine. I felt like I was in a good place. I don't know. I just need a proper answer to that question because it never got.
I don't think I was there when that question was asked, and I'm sorry, I can't even see the people who are up on the upper part of the room, and so I'm sorry if it looks like I'm not making eye contact, but I couldn't even tell where that was coming from. But I don't think I was there when that question was asked. But it is a very fair question, and I don't know what response you got when you asked it. I want to say I care deeply about the safety of this community. I care deeply about the safety of our students, of our faculty, of our staff, of all members of our community. And when we have problems, and you're bringing to the fore, we have problems. And we have to be willing to acknowledge that we have those problems and that a solution is not going to be single-faceted, but a solution is going to take every member of the community working together to have a safe community. I can't do that on my own, nor can any other individual person in this campus community do that on their own. We are working very hard to look at our policies and procedures and to make sure that they are as good as they can possibly be. Lindsay talked about this. With every U.S. presidential administration, there are changes in Title IX policies and Title IX rules. And just like every other institution in this country, we've had to change and adjust when we moved from the Biden administration to the from the Obama administration to the Trump administration, and now to the Biden administration. We have some ideas what those new regulations might look like, and we're preparing for that, but we don't know for sure until they come out. But that's all about response. And we do need to have good response. But what you're bringing up, and I think what many of you are bringing up, and rightfully so, and what you're angry about, and what I'm angry about too, is that we need to have response. Because ideally, we need better prevention so that there's less response that is needed. And what are we doing to try to have prevention? Every single faculty and staff member on this campus is required to engage in Title IX training every year. And somebody who was in the back corner there rightfully said, that may not make a difference for everyone, but it will make a difference for a lot of people. We have a situation where students are expected to go through training on a regular basis, but guess what? We've really focused that training on the first year. And we've really focused that training at the beginning of the first year, at new student orientation. One of the things that Lindsay and other folks in student life are focusing on for next year for implementation is an expectation that every student goes through training every year, just like we expect faculty and staff to go through training every year. We all have an obligation to work together to make it a safer community for everyone. And I'm very sorry. I'm sorry for you in the top of the room, whoever said that they felt like that they were poisoned. That's not acceptable. We don't want people to go through processes that are months and months and months long. And Lindsay is right to ask people, when do you want to hear about them? Yeah, we do need to do better. You're right. And thank you for telling us about it so that we can actually do better in the future. I am listening. We all are listening.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Marquardt. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Life here. I oversee our residential program. I just want to follow up on some of Kate's comments and speak a little bit to the concerns about prevention. As you all know, we have a lot of CAs around this campus. I see some in the audience tonight. We spend a ton of time on the Residence Life team doing our best to train our CAs on a whole spectrum of challenges that face them as community leaders year in and year out. One of those has been Title IX. For as long as I've been here, we've had a really strong relationship with the Advocates program. Victoria Lederer, the Advocates Advisor, is a former residential coordinator. She ended up moving into that role because of her work in Residence Life and how closely we've historically worked with that group. I want to throw this out right now. Residence Life, Student Life, any ideas that folks here that are involved in Advocates or other similar organizations have, how we can work together to strengthen the training of our CAs. We are all ears and we want to have that conversation with you. I also want to follow up and get more details on one of the points that Kate made, which is training every year in our new student orientation program. Certainly we need to revisit how we do orientation and how we engage with our first year students every year, but that's just working with the first year class. One of the things that we used to do before COVID hit, and I know I'm sure everyone hates it when we blame everything on COVID, but we had a really cool new student orientation program back in the day where not only did we have the Advocates be part of the new student orientation process, we have a group of students on campus that pulled from all different social circles, Greek life, athletics, different clubs and organizations, and what was their name, Laura? The players?
Stand by me players.
Stand by me players. And they gave skits on different real world scenarios that they'd either experienced themselves or that they thought could happen on a college campus. And all of us up here, we're old, right? We understand that the things that we're saying aren't going to resonate in the same way that things your peers would say are going to resonate. And we got a lot of really positive feedback from the students that were going through the orientation program back then, that was a really effective time for them in that orientation program. I don't know if that's the answer, but I think it'd be a really great thing if folks in this room that are really passionate about this issue, that want to see change in place starting next fall, when it comes to the orientation program, have that dialogue with us. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way so we can put you into this process and be partners with us, because that's how we're going to go ahead and make change. There were some comments made earlier to folks sitting up here that, we've done this forum before, and we didn't feel like we saw any change. And Kate did a really great job of outlining some of the things that the university has done over the last couple of years. And I think one of the things that we would really love to see is folks in this audience partnering up with us going forward to figure out how we can really come up with some really effective things that can make real change on this campus and how you can be an active voice in that process. The other comment that I will make, and this is sort of the age-old challenge that Res Life programs at colleges across the country face, and if we had the answer to this question, everyone would already be doing it, but new student orientation is a really effective way to communicate information to a bunch of first years that are just like taking in information like You know, it's coming from a fire hose, right? I mean, think about back when you were all first years. You probably listened to some of the things that you were hearing in orientation because you were a little nervous about how this whole college thing was gonna go. One of the biggest challenges we face is how to build community effectively and how to engage our upper class students that have already figured things out here. So I guess that's a question I would throw out to this group. We know that just having a conversation with the first year class isn't enough. How can we have a dialogue across campus that's actually effective and works? And any ideas that folks have of how we can work together in the initial stages of everyone coming back to campus in the fall, first year, sophomore, junior, senior, how can we go ahead and have conversations across all 4 years so that students across this campus, regardless of what club, organization, social group, whatever you want to call it, are part of, that this is kind of resonating with them. I mean, we already know that everyone here preaching to the choir, but there's what, maybe 200 people here at the start of this thing? We got about 2,000 students on campus. So how do we work together so that the other 1,800 that didn't show up tonight are on board with what we're all trying to figure out here tonight? So just want to say that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And the last thing I'll add, because I know that was a long answer, but I think it was an important answer, is when I'm saying training for Title IX, my real emphasis is on doing as much in-person training as possible. So that mandatory rollout that President Morris mentioned, that isn't just going to be a click-through online module. Even I personally, who this is my full-time job, I hate online modules. Okay, they're a good starting point, but a lot of people don't absorb what is there, have an engaging conversation. So we're talking about training in that area. I want you to know that that's very much geared towards in-person training and much longer dialogue. So I think I'm gonna go just kind of around a circle here. I know, thank you, I know some of you have been standing for quite some time, but yes, we're just gonna start here and go around.
Thank you. My name is JB, I'm a survivor. I want to start by making a statement and then a question. So for my statement, I know there's a lot of anger in the room. I personally feel it, I know my peers feel it, and I'm sure all of you up here in this room that we're here to speak with kind of feel it as well. And I want to say, first of all, I would like to thank whoever in the room is responsible for bringing Lindsay Cohen to us. I think if she was around when I was a freshman, I would have felt a lot safer to come forward with something that I did not. Like many men in my situation, I buried it, and I would not have if Lindsay had been here, because I trust her. And I think she is a good sign that some of us should take, that we're moving in a direction, even if we're going there slowly. Thank you. Now, moving on to my question. I'm going to preface this by saying I understand this question has to do with some legal issues, and they might be one that you're unable to answer because of legal matters, but it's something that I'm curious about, and I find that when I'm curious about something, I'm probably not the only one. In your opening remarks, President Morris, you stated that as cited as a defendant in this lawsuit, St. Lawrence University will be defending only themselves in the lawsuit and their actions taken after the initial event happened. To what degree does St. Lawrence University take any fault for the actions that they are being cited against right now in this lawsuit?
Thank you. I'm going to say 3 things in response to that, okay? The first thing that I want to say is we are all very pleased that Lindsay is here. We, as I said earlier, we knew that it was important to have a dedicated Title IX coordinator and prevention focus on our campus. And Sunday at the protest, KG recalled that the day after that, he and I sat down to really conceptualize what that position should look like. And we put that advertisement out. And we took our time. We had some candidates on campus that weren't quite right. And then Lindsay joined us. And it took a little bit longer. And I took some heat from students for how long it took to get her on campus. But it worked. In the end, it worked. And Lindsay, we are really happy that you're here. I wish she had been here for you in your first year. And what a ringing endorsement of Lindsay that you said that you felt like that might have changed things for you. In terms of your question about the legal matter, what I want to say is we're defending ourselves through that legal process. We feel like we have a strong defense, and I'm not going to say anything else here, and I realize that is very non-satisfactory in this context for you all, and I'm sorry, but that's the best that I can do right now.
Do you have a question?
I do have a question, but they've been waiting for very long.
Okay, thank you, so we'll go here and then pop back to you.
The first question asked me at the start of this forum was, what is the school going to be doing to actively, specifically rebuild our trust? I feel as a lot of these questions have been tonight, it was not directly answered. It was avoided, and it was answered with all situations of the past, of the past, of the past. This is what we've done in the past. Clearly, the past is not working. Clearly, it's still not continuing to work. I am asking again for specific actions you guys have as of now, even if it's an idea that can be pursued and filled out to make this better and to have our trust again. Because asking for to have our trust just as of right now is not right, and it's not necessarily fair with how we feel. So I'm just hoping you can answer with some actual specific fulfillment of this question and not things of the past.
Thank you. I'm going to share with you some of the things that are on our agenda for this summer related to sexual misconduct prevention and response. Over the summer, we're going to do a very careful review of all of our policies and procedures. I mentioned before that these policies and procedures will need to change because the Biden rules will come out over the summer and we will have to change what we're doing. But aside from making sure that we're compliant with the new Biden rules, we will also be making sure that we feel like we're doing the very best that we can by this community. So that's one thing that's going to happen. We're going to pull in outside experts to make sure that we're not just doing this on our own, but that we're thinking about national experts who can tell us whether we are in line with best practices or not. We are currently preparing for the kinds of training that I have mentioned before in terms of moving to a requirement for all students each year to have training on prevention. Lindsay is already planning, and you know, maybe you want to just speak to this, but I know that Lindsay is planning on roundtable discussions next year with students in a variety of different groups. She's still acclimating to this community, so she's still learning about it, and she has a very strong opinion that it's important to hear from the students before she jumps in and decides what is needed. And she's been spending a lot of time this year listening to students and will continue to do that to develop appropriate interventions next year. We're going to be looking at a historical review of cases. And this is important because if we look at cases, you know, when I've talked to students, and we've heard a little bit of it tonight, and I've heard a little bit of it in a variety of conversations with students where I hear about past cases that didn't go in a way that the student considered to be satisfactory. And then I also hear from students where they will say, not my case, but I know a couple of years ago, like before I got here, something that happened. So one of the things that we would like to do is to do a screen of our past cases and see what can we find out. Are there any patterns that we can be looking at in terms of what sorts of situations are most likely to precipitate an increase in reports to the Title IX coordinator? What are the patterns regarding who might be a survivor, who might be the person who is the respondent in a case. How does this play out on our campus for people from different demographic groups? When we find somebody to have violated an institutional policy, are we consistent in the kinds of sanctions that we've put in place? And are those sanctions that we've put in place different depending on any sort of identity characteristic of that person? So we're going to look back across a multiple year period of time since before the pandemic. And we want to look at what used to be the case and whether that's still appropriate for the current day and age as our entire society evolves in becoming more and more outraged about sexual misconduct when it exists. Are our historical sanctions still appropriate in the modern day and age? We're going to engage with students in some of these activities and plannings in terms of thinking about what you want to see and what you think will be the most effective, for conversations with you, for training sessions with you, and what we need to be thinking about for our faculty and staff. Those are some of the concrete things that we have on the agenda for this summer. And Lindsay, I might ask you, and maybe Laura, I might ask you for other things that you've got in your area. But that's my summer list right at the moment.
I'll go ahead and add one, then Laura. Picking just the one I do want to get around the circle. So faculty have something that's called May College. It's, yes, in May, where they talk about a number of just topics, ways that they can do things potentially better in the classroom, just become more informed. And one of the topics that came from that Sexual Wellness Advisory Committee was how to be trauma informed in the classroom. That even potentially one statement in the syllabus that might say, some of this content might be triggering. If you need an alternate assignment, please get in touch. Through having additional conversations after that first question of, is one statement enough? More and more, as I was bringing that thought to students of, many syllabi don't even have that statement. So thinking, okay, was that enough? And as I brought that to students, I was able to see, for a lot of them, no, 2 months later, they don't necessarily remember that or feel that they can take advantage of it. So instead, what I'm going to work through in May College and with other faculty is how to think through their syllabus potentially of, are there certain places in it that we should add those little content warnings? And explaining, why is it that we're reading this? Maybe it's difficult, but I want you to keep these things in mind. But at the same time, if you're not in a place that you can read all of it, maybe let's work through getting through part of an assignment. So that's just something in the classroom that we're addressing. How can advising be better informed when it comes to trauma topics? How can just in the classroom? So that's one thing we're going to bring to my college.
And another thing that we're going to do is we're going to listen to you, the students. That's what we do. We listen to you. I know that you don't think that, but when that protest happened on Kate's lawn 2 years ago, we listened. That's how we got Lindsay. We listened to what you had to say. And we went out and we hired a Title IX coordinator and educator that met the needs of what you had to say. We listened. That's how we hired Lindsay. We're gonna go out, we're gonna hire people that meet the needs of what you say. We listen to what you have to say. We listen when it's difficult. We listen when you come to things like this and you tell us through your questioning, through your hard-hitting statements. We do listen. Come to us. Talk to us. Talk to us in our offices. Talk to us and stop us in the student center. We listen. Come talk to me. I listen. I listen all the time. When you're having a bad day, yes, I do give you those agey hugs, but I'm also listening to what you have to say. That's how we got Lindsay. So when the sexual assault climate survey comes out, I'm gonna urge you to take it, and it should be coming out.
It came out 2 weeks ago.
There you go.
Or a week and a half. yeah.
2 weeks
It's
ago.
It's gonna be out all month of April.
All month of April. So take that sexual climate survey, so that we can listen. Because the more of you that take it, and the more of you that tell us these things, yes, it is hard to hear. Yes. But it makes our campus better, because we do listen to what you have to say. Write down those things in the sexual climate survey, so that we can hear those things that you're saying. While yes, it's difficult, it also makes our campus better. So take that survey, because we take those things seriously. So say it so that we can listen. That's what I urge, definitely.
I just want to add one more thing, and I'll be brief. I had a great conversation with Tara Ten, the director of the counseling center, yesterday when we talked about our crisis response. And one of the things that we discussed doing is creating a list of resources for a variety of situations. So if there's a situation involving a sexual assault, if there were a situation involving a student death, if there was something that had a racial violence component to it, so that in the moment, we're not then thinking, okay, we have a lot of different resources on our campus, but who are the best people to list for this situation? In a moment where individuals might, for example, had a couple of students pass away in the 10 years I've been on this campus that I've known personally. In a moment like that, if I had to think on my feet, I probably wouldn't be at my best. So we want to have those lists created ahead of time, so that when we need to send something out quickly, there's a default list, and that's how we'll make sure that we don't inadvertently leave anyone off in the future. So that's something that we've discussed moving forward as well.
So I know I was gonna go over here, but someone on the side over here just told me, hey, by the way, this group has been waiting over here the longest, so I apologize for that, and I'm gonna bounce over here. I'm gonna come back.
Hi, my name is Maddie, and I'm a survivor. It is my understanding that the university has a system in place in which the student body is supposed to be emailed when there is a possible threat to the safety of campus, whether that's physical threat or sexual assault threat. I want you guys to explain what the criteria you guys use to determine what a threat to campus would be, what a possible harm threat would be, and why the system is so underutilized. And I also do acknowledge that while we understand that you guys as admin have a legal obligation to the university, you have a arguably more important, more obligation to the safety of the student body and the safety of all employees and serving.
Honestly, I don't know if anyone on this panel feels most comfortable with that. Really, the best person to answer that question is Pat Gagnon, the Director of Safety and Security, but he had a personal matter come up pretty last minute. He is unfortunately not here. It has to do with the Clarity Act, and it is a conversation where there are a few administrators that look at the criteria to make the best judgment case to make sure that the safety and well-being of all our students. I don't feel comfortable answering your question. I want to make sure that we have a correct answer to anyone. There are like 3 or 4 criteria that we need to meet, and when those are met, that's when we do make an announcement to the campus community. But I don't want to give any false information at this moment, and I'm not sure if anyone here has those criteria. The criteria are when we send out a campus-wide alert.
One of them is it has to be
But I can give you our word that we will get you when you get that information
the
out.
full question, but as we said, it was about when do we send an alert. One of those is it has to be immediate unknown threat to the campus. So if it is an unknown, like we don't know who that person is, and that person is an unknown threat to the campus, then you send out that alert to the campus. So if it is an unknown threat, then you send it out to the campus.
And what I will say and what I can give my word on is we will find out what the criteria is and make sure that's something that we relate to the student body, because I think that is an important question. I just don't want to give false information. So, thank you for the question.
We're gonna continue over here one more time and then that's over.
Just a bit of a follow-up to the question they asked at the protest on Sunday. And really just the question for me is that this seems like a battle to be cut as easy as possible. Seems like it made it as easy as possible in university right then. And then every step of the way, the student body is left out of the loop. And there's really minimal possible accountability as well. And so when I asked this the first time, it was university policy, general university practice across all the institutions, and then also law. And I understand that the law is not necessarily in your direct control, but everything else is. And both of those university policy and really also just general university practice is not designed to protect survivors. This is not to protect the weak institutions, and this is not to protect weak individuals. And so, if your hands are truly bound by the law, which it seems like you guys want us to believe, I'm not sure why institutional policy keeps being mentioned, because that would be relevant. I'm not sure why general university practice keeps being mentioned. And so it just makes it seem like you hear much more about the status of the university than lived experiences of people actually living work on a daily basis. And so instead of just taking your word for it, that you guys are working behind the scenes to get stuff done, because I really do believe you guys care. I think I've talked to you enough when you do. I'm just not sure that you care as much as you care about the status of the university, if that makes sense. And so, the question is, are there things that we can do in front of us that we can see that's tangible, that's meaningful? Like, let's say maybe we will pay for a lawyer for anybody who comes in as a survivor, something like that. Or let's say instead of, you've got the FYP program that says, hey, we really want all of our students to be able to read and write a college law. What if you incorporate that, be able to act like a kind of decent human being as well, to be able to support survivors and not have to create people, not have that at any time in anybody else's life. And so to actually embed that, not as an orientation thing, but an advocate's training throughout the course of the entire coursework within the institution itself. And then also, just a due process can be redefined in a way that tries to reduce harm. That makes sense, which is, let's say the due process should support the survivor and to minimize any more harm. Because we know from the statistics that survivors are very reliant. And so I think you can go on presumption of guilt from that. And then apologize to Dallas, especially when you're feeling present in the community.
Okay, I want to thank you for your comments. Not just today, but also Sunday. Really appreciate it. We have a couple of people who are taking notes, and I hope that we captured some of those ideas that you just shared, because those are some interesting ideas that we can think about. I do want to say, and people aren't going to be happy to hear me say this, but you said this Sunday, you said it again today, this seems like a clear-cut case. And what we have seen, what has been made public is the complainant's allegations against the university and against the professor. We have not seen anybody's response to that. And that is essentially what due process is all about. That there is an opportunity for the person who is the respondent to be able to respond. If the university were to take action based on the allegation alone, we would be out of compliance with the law. And I'm not a lawyer. There might be other people here who are lawyers who feel more comfortable speaking to that than I do, but I do feel like I have to reiterate that in response to what you've said, because we can't just make a decision based on an allegation. And I realize, folks, that's an unsatisfactory answer, where you want to see that action happen, And we cannot do it because we would be breaking the law if we did that. Again, not very satisfactory, but it is what it is. And we heard Kimberly talk about it. You're seeing a few people up here nod their heads. That is the circumstance that we are in. The U.S. Court of Law has as one of its foundational principles due process. And that means going through that full process where people on all sides of any given issue have the opportunity to have their say, and we're not there yet with this case. So I'm sorry that I can't provide a different response to you today than I did on Sunday on that particular point, but you have brought up some good ideas that we have captured and will think about.
I want to just follow up quickly on your comment about the first year program, because I think that is, as we have this conversation about ways that we can think about impacting the campus culture, that is one that stands out to me as kind of the academic dean of the university, as one that has a lot of potential. We have an associate dean for the first year, Dr. Jen Thomas, who served with me and with some others who were on the panel tonight on the university's task force on the causes and prevention of sexual misconduct some years back, which was a very long, intensive process, gathered up a lot of information and led to a number of the changes that, including the hiring of a full-time Title IX coordinator, including the creation of the wellness committee that was referenced before, including the creation of Laura LaVoy's full-time wellness position. And that report is available on the university's website. I commend it to all of you. But I mentioned the first year, but I wanted to follow up on your comment about the first year program in particular, because one of the things that we found in that task force process is it's possible to change the university's policies and practices, and that tends to be where our focus goes immediately when we think about changes we can make. Harder than that is changing the culture. But if you don't change the culture, changing the policies by itself is not going to be as effective as it could be. And we have a challenging problems with our culture on this campus. If we can imagine ways, we collectively, all of you here, the administration, everybody who's part of this community, can imagine ways to make this a trauma-informed culture on our campus across the board, can imagine ways to make this a culture in which every survivor who comes forward knows with certainty that their friends are going to support them, that they don't have to worry about being ostracized, they don't have to worry about losing their friend group, they don't have to worry about being socially isolated because of that. If we could be there, then we have a chance of being fundamentally more just and better campus culture. Those are difficult, long-term challenges to make. The first year program is a great place to think about that, and I'm going to follow up with Dr. Thomas to have that conversation with the FYP faculty and to think about ways that we can do that. I wanted to say one other thing, just because I don't know if I'll make it back to the podium tonight. But someone referenced before one of the past presidents of the university, who's somebody that I work with, I respect immensely, and is a great friend of mine. I've been here for, this is my 24th year at St. Lawrence. I've spent my entire professional career here. I've worked with, because I care about students, because like all of your professors, I want students to learn. That's what I want to do in my career. I've worked with 3 presidents over that time. You are not going to have, and I cannot imagine, a president who is more committed to those goals of making this a safe campus, an inclusive campus, a campus that all of us can be proud of than Kate Morris is. And I just want to acknowledge that, because in a moment of crisis, when there's anger, when there's kind of frustration and fear and anxiety that's directed at the university, the president sometimes is we look to as the point to place that anger. And it would have been the easiest thing in the world to do, to say, I'm going to have the senior staff come here, the Title IX coordinator come here. Kate Morris is here herself tonight and has been talking with students the entirety of the last week, many students on this campus. And these are difficult conversations to have. This is not easy work to do, but I want to acknowledge and respect that, because that is the mark of a great university president. That would not happen at every university. It would not happen with every president that St. Lawrence University has had. But Kate Morris is walking the walk and is here tonight because she believes just as firmly as anybody in this room that we need to make this a campus that reflects those values. So I want to say that and just have that as part of the conversation tonight.
So I know it was, again, another long answer, but I think an important answer. I'm going to add one more tidbit and then hop over here. Part of your question was, we keep referencing policies, procedures, but also the law and how those two, how to reconcile. So something I can say when I was at Duke Law about a year ago, something that a group of us did was write a comment to the university when they were changing their policies and procedures. And a lot of that was in the fact that when the Trump regulations came out, a lot of lawyers were just trying to figure out, okay, how do we comply with this? Let's get something in writing. And now we've had about those 2 years where it's, okay, yeah, at Duke writing a comment of, these are our suggestions, how we can change the policy, how we can change the procedures. And yeah, about 50% of the suggestions we said, the administration couldn't do. Not gonna lie, we didn't get that many answers on why until, yes, a bunch of us just kept nudging the administration to give us answers. But the reason, and this is something I'm gonna also open in May, is a comment period for students about the regulations, the policies, the procedures. And it's because, okay, I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice. And that's because lawyers sometimes don't understand how it works on the ground. And so that's how it was everyone was trying to follow the law, but there's so many ways you can interpret it. Sometimes you can interpret it and it's actually illegal. So no, we don't want to do that. But in saying we're going to adjust our policies, our procedures, maybe there's a few different legal ways we could be doing it. So yes, we're going to hop over here and then we'll do, I think this time, yes, now we'll actually just go around. So I think we're going to go around. If anyone has a question that they really want to ask, I'd say possibly try to step up to the mic now. And then we'll stick around a little bit after. But I think, yes, we'll do once around. So if you, again, want to get up, I know, standing for a while, I've had these people standing for a while. But please, yes, go to the mics. We'll do that once around.
Sorry. My name is Margo. I want to thank you for being here. And I see the situation that we're in now, and that you as administrators may not all have been here at the time, but you are here now, and you are those people who can make changes to the committees that hire people who are the faculty and staff that work every day with us as students on this campus. And what I would like to know from you tonight is what actionable steps you as the university administrators are going to take to revise your hiring process, making it more thorough, and ensuring that you're hiring people who are going to be safe on this campus and are also going to promote this campus culture that you say you're trying to create and will be beneficial to student wellness and safety here.
For reviewing applications when people apply here, and also their background checks when they are hired. So as part of our processes, we implemented that about almost a decade ago, where we implemented checks for the person hired after they're interviewed, but before they actually start on campus, to go through a background check process that checks education, sex offender registry, and criminal and felony misdemeanor convictions. So those are in place. You're asking what more can we do? And we all want to do more. We want this place to be as safe as it can be. We battle with some rules that we all have protections. So what more can we do? I think we can ask deeper questions.
at every step of the way. So there are some questions that can be asked in the initial interview process, there are some questions that can be asked post-offer, but before people start, and those are the things that we're honing in now. What more can we do?
Are you currently revising those?
Yes.
I would not add much except to say that I think that the process this summer of looking at a lot of different policies and practices of the university could very well include that. I don't know that we have finalized the list yet, but that seems like something that would be very worth exploring. So I think we should take that as maybe a possibility out of this conversation and think about that for moving forward.
So, thank you again for waiting. I know I popped over there, but now we're going to the mental review.
Hi, my name is Mary. Thank you all for being here today. I guess I just wanted to say that hearing that there really isn't a concrete plan on prevention going into the future was very unsettling to me. And I understand that the university does have its hands tied with policies and restrictions and also with the due process, which only makes me want to say I feel like there should be more emphasis on prevention. It should be how we make students not feel that they can't trust a system that the university cannot change. So I just want to know, are there concrete actions? Are you looking at research, programs? Are you talking to professors? And yes, I do believe you should be reaching out to students, but at the same time, it's not solely up to the students to be coming up with ideas on prevention. And I feel like my personal experience being here is the university has given me the first aid orientation, the online training, and that's pretty much all prevention that I was given. I was given additional training from advocates, which is student-led and student-organized. And I am so grateful for that. I just want to know, I would feel more comforted if there was more concrete plan going into the future of how this could be avoided. And instead of having a student who feels like I would rather not report something because I don't want to go through this process, I don't trust it, I think it's going to take time, not putting them in that kind of position at all to begin with. And I do appreciate providing resources for students after they are sexually assaulted and trying to support them as best the university can after they are assaulted, but let's not put them there in the first place. So I guess, are there more specifics to a plan of prevention, and where have we been looking to come up with these actions for prevention? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned before that, yes, we have the rollout it's going to be all Thelma-funded student organizations, Greek Life student athletes. Every year, every class year will be required to have one Title IX training or sexual wellness training, but giving a little bit more flavor to what that is. So I'm going to host 12 to 18 different sessions, and also I've already met with several sports teams this year on bystander intervention training, on creating a culture that, okay, maybe you do talk about how often you have sex, but also a culture where you're able to call out a friend and say, hey, that doesn't look good. What are you doing? Okay, maybe it's time to go home. Some of those bystander intervention skills, and understanding too that we all have different personalities. Some people can go right up to someone directly and say, what are you doing? Stop doing that. Other people, though, their personality doesn't cater to that, or maybe it's just their situation status-wise in an organization. So it could be distracting someone, spilling a drink. Okay, I actually remember in the advocates training I attended, Molly pretending to fall over. Just giving them skills for how to do bystander training. So that's one of the things I'm bringing. Others are just a general Title IX 101. I think that's something that a lot of people, maybe initially when we go through in like a large group of here's how to make a report, okay, that's a lot of information sometimes to get if it's in a huge setting. So that's why having smaller groups of 15 to 30 people to really go into the nitty-gritty, if that's what someone wants, of Title IX procedures. Another one called sexpectations. So defining for ourselves, what do we want in our relationships? Short-term, long-term, just for that night. So start to have those conversations. Those are just a few. I do want to get to everyone, but those are some that I'm going to be having. I'm building more and more ideas, but it's something I'm going to hold them already. And then other theme houses and Greek life sports teams, some have already reached out to me, but now it's going to be part of a requirement that they must have that.
We also are members of ATICSA, which is the Association of Title IX Advisors, which helps us on the back end to know, and Lindsay is very active on that listserv, to be able to work with other Title IX advisors across the country, to be able to come up with other trainings. We're also working with the Title IX Solutions people to come up with other trainings for not only the students, but also those of us who work behind the scenes, so the investigators and all of those people as well. So we are doing a lot of trainings. In addition to the students, we're doing trainings for those of us who work on the investigator side or the behind the scenes side. So we are doing those trainings to programmings and procedures and processes as well. So it's not that we're just sitting back and waiting, we're actually being very proactive. The listening side for you all is that we want to hear from you as well. We want to hear from you, the students, just to know what you're thinking and to be able to hear what you're thinking, because we don't know what you're thinking unless you tell us. And so those fears, those thoughts, those ideas, all these things that you're telling us right now, we can't read your minds. And so having these types of forums to get those out and to be able to hear your thoughts, that's why I say, come and talk to us. Part of Lindsay's job that we actually set up is education. And she really wanted to do that. And hearing her when she interviewed, that was one of the main points. She was very excited about the educational piece. Yes, she really wanted to do the Title IX pieces, and we heard that. We heard that come out in her interview. But she was really, really excited about the educational pieces and really getting out there to educate the students and the bystander intervention pieces. We have also invested in that. So working with companies who really do that bystander intervention. So like she said, oops, I tripped, or, you know, these creative ways to really get people out of that situation. Or, you know, I'm actually trained in bystander intervention as well. So, you know, people saying, oh, I got that tampon you needed earlier, is a way to get somebody out of an uncomfortable situation that they may not realize that they're in sometimes, or helping them get out of that uncomfortable situation. Sometimes people are not trained to do so, whereas other people will just step up and do that. So having those tools in that kit to be able to train people on bystander intervention and to really empower them to step up and say those things, that really does help. And so we have all those trainings. We have that training manual from working with another company that does do that. And having them come in and help our students do that, we really want to make those investments. So those are really hardcore things that we want to do coming up for students.
I just want to mention too that it was brought up before, we are also finding ways to educate ourselves on marginalized populations that also have larger numbers in terms of sexual assault and domestic violence. So looking at queer community, looking at students of color, and figuring out what their needs are and how we can better support those students as well. And there are different, I know that the university has paid to send administrators to conferences to learn research. We've gone on webinars. Like, we are trying to educate ourselves, and Lindsay has some really great ideas and has already met with several groups. I know in student activities and leadership, we do the orientation piece, and we are really trying to move beyond orientation to get to other students. Because we recognize that is only the starting point, and know that we have to go beyond that.
Thanks, Ashley, and thank you all, and thanks for the question about specific steps. I'm Evelyn Jennings. I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs, and I just wanted to briefly say some things that we're doing with faculty right now. So I've been talking with individual and groups of faculty all week, because they're hearing from you about distress and concerns. And so Friday, we're having a forum for faculty and staff, where we're going to talk about what they've heard, what we've heard here tonight, what specific steps we can take. And I'm also working with Lindsay about the May College that she was explaining. That's 2 days of professional training for faculty and staff folks. So we're starting something immediately, but we, as AKG was saying, we're listening and working on specific steps that we want to take going forward. Thank you.
So yes, we're gonna keep going around. I'm gonna say, I love my panel back here, but we're just gonna try to make this fun, but we're all just be a little bit quicker with some of our answers. We wanna answer all of them, but I also wanna be respectful of your time, so we're gonna go back here to Zayla.
Hi, I'm going to try to ask this as respectfully as possible, so I apologize for my pause. But there were many occasions throughout that document and also today where you mentioned you had made mistakes, both in this high profile situation and with students who came up here and told us that there were mistakes made. This makes me concerned for situations currently ongoing and situations prior where they were not seen by the rest of students or faculty. So my question is, if we are paying you guys our tuition to do these sort of things, to take care of students, to take care of faculty, and this many mistakes are being made, what are you doing to actively fix that, and why have they been made so many times?
Thank you, very good question. And I'm gonna start in the response, and Lindsay has asked everyone to be brief, so other people can come up here and talk a little bit more after I do. I have admitted several mistakes that I've made in this process, and I'm a firm believer in a version of leadership where you show vulnerability and you're willing to admit your mistakes. I admitted the mistake on Sunday, I admitted it today. My communication to you all last Thursday morning was not the best that it could or should have been. And I regret that, and I'm very sorry for that. That is not a process mistake in the policy, in the carrying out of the policy. That's a leadership mistake. That's where we were trying to make decisions in a really fast pace so that you would hear about this from me first rather than from some other source. That's not a mistake in carrying out our institutional process. Kimberly, in her leadership, acknowledged a mistake today. Laura acknowledged her, not really a mistake, but an oversight that we made, and I'm also a part of that, and it was related to that comment. These are processes and policies that are highly technical. There are multiple ones of them. They sometimes conflict with each other, and they change a lot. And that's not an excuse, but it's an explanation that sometimes minute details don't happen the way that they should. And yes, we need to do better. But I don't think those mistakes that we've talked about are us getting a D-. I think they're us getting an A-.
But I feel like telling someone that they couldn't get legal counsel is a D- mistake, as well as putting the course plan on top of the other mistakes mentioned.
Would you mind, I'm actually gonna come up here, I think they've been just a little bit longer, but thank you as well.
immediately. My brain immediately went to, what are we gonna do for the next 5 weeks, when I heard there are a lot of plans for summer. And I'd just like to add that the advocates will still be here, as we always are. We have a meeting every Tuesday that maybe 2 people show up to every week. But we always have a hotline, please use it. We're still gonna be here. We're still gonna be working to make campus a safe space. I don't even look at the email, honestly. I got sent out last Thursday because I get so many emails that look like that. So like, we're here doing this every single week. So come to us because we are actually working to make a change. And these next 5 weeks, if they seem scary, we'll be doing that, and they'll be making bigger change over the summer. We'll be working with the people this next 5 weeks. So to speak towards like the prevention part, I would like to start by saying I spent my week this week. It's Teal Week, yay! I spent my week begging on my hands and knees for funding for Teal Week because I made the bold decision to buy my advocates' uniforms this semester. I redesigned them, which was cool, but it didn't take any more money to do the redesign. And I absolutely don't blame Thelmo for the lack of funding for this, but it was a lot of having to ask other clubs. And the sad fact is that nobody wants to come to an event on a Tuesday that's a presentation in a Hannon room, which is the only free thing that we can do. When we have informative presentations like this, nobody shows up because that's not interesting. And like I kind of said earlier in my address, if the pot's not boiling, nobody's really gonna care, which is kind of sad, but like, why do we need to take a stand when nothing's immediately happening? I'd like to use the example of the color run. For the color run, before I had the funding, I used $200 more than I had in our budget for it. But we made, for the renewal house, about 4 times more than we did all week last semester on it, because we were able to use our budget. So I guess my question for you, if you're saying that you want us to come to you with your ideas and you want us to be able to tell you what we need to see and you want to know how we keep people involved, well, that's what I've dedicated my entire life to outside of education, is trying to get people involved and trying to get people thinking about this every week of the year and not just when there's a big deal going on. So do you guys have the budget to be able to, because it's just another crummy incidence of assault being politicized. Nobody's going to pay attention if there's money involved, and we're not getting enough money to have events. And I kind of brought this up to you, President Morris, when we met, but there were other issues that you wanted to bring up to me, and I appreciate that. When I was telling you about our 2-week projects, I want to have a faculty training, and I brought this up to Lindsay, but we simply don't have the budget for it. And I know many faculty have come up to me this semester and asked if I could introduce them to the advocates, and I simply can't because, yeah, reserving a room is free, but not the water and snacks that we'd have to provide. I don't know, it's just like silly little details that we don't think about when we have to train people. So yeah, we'd love to be able to do more, but we simply don't have a budget for it. So do you guys have the budget to get people paying attention, or are you willing to commit the budget to get people to work towards prevention?
I can speak on the Thelmo piece, which I know she said she wasn't playing, which I appreciate. But I do want to just reference that last year Thelmo made a contribution to a mental health counselor so that we could get FL staff up to fully staffed, which made our budget a little tighter than we obviously had to navigate. But we are actually, as an executive board, going through and figuring out how we use our funds and where we can make smarter choices, and not say spend money on shipping things and versus communicating and having students get things here, et cetera. Just silly little things that add up. So, we work with the Hill News to talk about decreasing a small amount of how many they printed every single week. So that way that money went down a little bit in price. So we are trying to be creative. And then last year, this year we're also not doing just a flat cut. We're going to have to be very intentional with the organizations that are active and having a positive impact on our campus. And I've given word to groups such as EMS and the advocates that there are groups like that that we recognize the hard work that you're doing and will continue to support and fund. So again, I can't speak on administration necessarily, but in terms of FOMO, we are being much more intentional as we look at our budget and try to figure out what is best to move forward.
And yes, advocates, I would love for you to come talk to me and we can work some things out. Yes, definitely.
Yes, we're gonna go here.
Yes. Okay, great. So I also had a question about the hiring process, especially being surprised that you guys had missed a lot of previous assault allegations that you currently had prior to having him on campus. I'm still very confused on that, but I don't think we're gonna get an answer tonight, and I'm okay with that. But I guess I have a suggestion. There's a lot of statistical evidence and research out there for anyone who does commit assault, and they are more likely to commit assault again. It's about 70 to 90%. So my only suggestion is don't hire them and don't keep them on campus, and do so in a timely manner. And don't wait for 6 to 8 cases against them. One is plenty enough.
Thank you both for being so patient. We're gonna do these as our last two questions, but then we're gonna stick around too.
So in the case that we've been talking about, that we all read online, it said that the school found inconsistencies in the survivor's story. Are you planning on making amends for kind of victim blaming the survivor for being drugged, or taking accountability for doubting the survivor? And if the survivor who has been drugged restores their case, do you immediately discredit them because they have inconsistencies in their story?
So, I'll speak to the process, but I can't speak to the case. When we conduct an investigation, we take into consideration if a complainant alleges that there was drugging and that might have resulted in like a Swiss cheese memory, where memory comes back in pieces, all that is taken into consideration by the people who are responsible for rendering a decision on the case. But I can't speak to any of the particulars of this case. I know that's frustrating, but we have to wait for this process to reach its conclusion.
Throughout this meeting, there's been a lot of discussion about ideas that the students have brought forward and about how the faculty and staff would like to hear ideas from the students. Is there like a formal system? Is there a formal system that students can present concerns, suggestions, or similar things to the university as a whole,
I will say that the purpose of the Vice President in the Student's Office is exactly that. Come in, make an appointment. That's what we're there for, is exactly that. Yes, we do have a formal process. Come in, you can talk about that, you can make those formal complaints, you can talk about anything you want, and we have meetings every other week with all the deans and directors in student life, and we talk about what y'all talk about. Yes, we talk about exactly that, and then we get everything out in front of all the deans and directors, and then we address your things that you bring up. Exactly. Yes, we do. That's how we address the things that come up with mental health. That's how we address all the concerns that you have in front of all our deans and directors. We bring those up there every other week. And then if they need to come forward to senior staff, I bring those forward to senior staff as well. I meet with Kate all the time and bring any of your concerns there. She listens to those. If they're academic in nature, I bring those forward to Carl. If they're any other, if they're financial, I bring those forward to Colorado Carl. If they're anything else, they come forward to any of the student life people, and if they need to go to academics, Carl has a meeting with his people and he brings them to theirs. So yes, we do have formal processes that your concerns are taken forward and are treated seriously. So we do take those very seriously.
And what Angie just said about the Student Life Office goes for every one of us on this panel. If you have an idea, if you have a thought, if you have a concern that you want to express, any way you choose to express it, in person, email, however you want to do it, I would worry less about, kind of, if it's an academic question, it should go to the academic dean's office, and just focus on giving it to somebody. And I can say on behalf of all of us with absolute confidence that we're committing to you tonight, that we will share those ideas, every single one of them, wherever they can go to, have be considered and have the best effect. And I think President Morris mentioned it, but we're also, collecting ideas that came up here tonight, so for exactly that reason, so we could follow up on them. So
Yes, and if you don't want to bring them to us as adults, you can take them to your Thelma. Your Thelma is here, your advocates are here, you have student representatives who will bring them forward as well. You can take them to them, and they will bring them forward. We have Cookie Council that meets once a month with administrators and meets with Kate and other administrators, and they will bring those concerns forward too. I promise you, we do listen, and I promise you, we do care. We do love y'all. Well, we listen to y'all. Y'all's concerns keep us up at night. We don't sleep oftentimes because your concerns. We do love y'all. We love you students. That's why we work these jobs, because we absolutely love and care about all of you students and your concerns. We listen to them, they keep us up, we worry about them, we talk about them in meetings, we talk about them in senior staff, we talk about them in Cookie Council, we talk about them in all of our independent staff meetings. We really, really and truly do care about y'all. I know there are times, especially like this, when things happen like this, that y'all don't think we care, but I promise you, we care about you students. That's why we get into this kind of work. That's why we're here at 10 o'clock at night, because we do love y'all. I promise you we do. And we listen to y'all. So yes, bring forward your concerns. I'm in my office. There's a little old lady that sits there in line. She's been here 60 years. Make an appointment with her if I'm not there. I love to meet with students. I walk around here all the time. Stop me. Stop me. I will sit at your table and talk to you about anything you want to talk about. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care about how good it is. If you've had a good day, I want to hear it. If it's a bad day, I want to hear it. If it's a concern, if you hate something, tell me, because I want to bring that forward. Because we care about you, and we care about your concern. We want you to have a great experience here at St. Lawrence. We want you to graduate, and we want you to look back and say, you know what? I love that place. We want you to make it better. That's why we want to listen to you, because we love you. We care about you, each and every one of you. I promise you that.
I just want to add one quick resource that wasn't mentioned. You also have TAs, specifically for our underclassmen. If you have a concern and you don't feel comfortable coming to administration, you can brainstorm with your TAs and they can help navigate the right ways to report that. They're a great resource on our campus. So just also remember, they're your peers, but they also are trained and connect you to the right folks.
I really appreciate the question, and as you did, I realized we don't actually have like one central place sometimes for questions to go or concerns that something actually kind of popped over to President Morris. So we'll look into just the kind of technology infrastructure. If it's a certain email that they can all go to and someone's monitoring that. Because I understand the experience of sometimes of being, I don't know who to ask this. And then it gets sent to 5 different people, all really trying to do their best. So that's something we're going to explore. There can be one just easier channel for it to go through. So I really appreciate that thought, and that's something that probably won't be in place this month. but it's something absolutely come next academic year, we'll have better answers around that. So, I know, do you have kind of a quickish?
Yeah, it's a quicker question. I just wanted to comment about having a forum in general. I think everyone here appreciates the time that you all have taken to be on campus, to listen to all of us, to answer our questions, to hear our concerns and our frustrations. But there have been times during this forum where questions have been asked and the responses have been breezed over and been replaced by what seems to be scripted responses. And I understand that there are certain things that you might need to read off of a script to be able to not get in trouble with or contradict what you're trying to say to us. But I just hope that there's somebody who has been taking notes during this, and I know that there have been, and I see the pointing that there are people taking notes, and I'm glad that that's happening. But I hope that these questions that have been breezed over, like there was one about victim blaming, and there was one about actions that were being taken that somebody had to ask again, like later in the forum, for it to get an answer. But I hope these questions will be revisited, and I just want to ask how those questions are going to be revisited, and when those are revisited, when students will hear the answers to them in an honest way.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that you express some gratitude to those of us who are here. And we appreciate that you recognize that we're here because we do want to listen and we do want to care. And especially, we've had a pretty good audience here tonight. And that means that there's a large group of people here at St. Lawrence who truly care about the campus climate, whether that's the student climate or your interactions with the faculty and the staff. And I want you to know, in terms of my own comments, just speaking for myself, I did have a script for my opening remarks. Not gonna lie, a little bit nervous. And I got my list out, where I said, this is my list for things, my running list right now. Those are the only times I've had a scripted response. I don't know about other people, but I want to be really straightforward about that, speaking for myself. What's going to happen is, yes, we do have several people up here who are taking notes. During the protest at McAllister House on Sunday afternoon, we were not taking notes at that time, but a bunch of people went home immediately thereafter and wrote everything down. So we are recording what kinds of questions you're asking, what kinds of comments you are making, what kind of ideas you are bringing to the fore. You just heard Lindsay talk about perhaps we can create, with technology, a way that students can submit ideas, perhaps so that they would be completely anonymous. We have a lot of different groups at the university that, and I'm talking about administrative groups at the university that address various types of topics. So on the student life side, for example, Paige mentioned the deans and the directors meeting. On the academic affairs side, we have the dean's staff. We have the senior staff, we have a retention committee, we have a wellness committee, we have lots of different places where people who are sitting up here, who are listening to everything that you're saying, that we will be following up, that we will be pulling this through in those various conversations. So that's how that will happen. And I appreciate you making sure that you can feel confident that we will be following up and not just ending this conversation today. And frankly, that was never our intent, to end this conversation today. It's an ongoing conversation, and it always will be until society doesn't have any more sexual assaults, sexual issues of sexual misconduct. So in closing this session tonight, I want to again thank you. And I want to again reiterate, our end goals are the same. We all want a better campus. and that it takes all of us together. We're all up here for a little while longer. If anyone wants to come up and ask anybody any particular questions or make any additional comments, and we will continue the conversation. Lindsay, thank you for being our MC tonight. Thanks to everyone who was up here for sharing your comments, but most especially, thanks to you all as students. Thanks to Thelmo, to the other student organizations, to the people who conceptualized this session so that the student voice was central and first. And we've learned a lot tonight.